Hello, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitch, Periscope, YouTube. And let's see. Let me turn off my notification noises so it doesn't interrupt the feed. My name is Frank Lavinia, and you can catch me on all these places online. Let's see. I'm doing this on my phone. There we go. There are all the places you can catch me on Instagram and on Twitter. I'm Frank Digs Data. Just like to do this thing every Saturday while the kids are in martial arts class. As things slowly get back to normal, and very slowly at that, I did notice there's a lot more contrails and airplanes in the air lately. So I wonder, like as we get into spring break season, is travel going to kind of go back to some kind of normal? And I don't know. It's hard to believe it's been a year. A year ago today, I think it was Friday the 13th last year. I actually was my second to last time inside of Microsoft Office. And shortly, I think, that was about a year since I did any kind of business trip. It's been weird. No conferences. I mean, everything's virtual, but still, it's weird. It's hard to believe it's been a year. And who thought like a year ago this would last a year? I didn't think it would last a year. Even in my most pessimistic things, I thought it would be 3 months before things would slowly shake out. But who knows? Can't predict the future. Predicting the future is hard. But so last week I actually recorded. In case you're wondering, I got asked how come we didn't do a stream last Saturday? And as far as I knew, I did. I actually just forgot to hit the start the stream. So I'm talking to my phone for like an hour, or not like an hour, but at least like half an hour, and it was nothing there. That was pretty funny. But it happens. It happens. So this week I picked up another book on Audible. This time it's Own Your Weird. So far it's pretty good. About halfway through it. Maybe a third of the way through it. And then there's a book by Marshall Sylver, Sylver, that I am trying to check out. And let me call you back. I tell you, man, like all of a sudden, as soon as I go to live stream, all the messages come in. I must be a popular guy. I don't know. Or it's Murphy and his law messing with us again. But anyway, this was an interesting week. So this week I had had a hackathon, or kind of a proof of concept rapid prototype event. That was cool. We did it in conjunction for a customer with Databricks. So got to kind of show them both the Databricks kind of big data tooling, as well as our tooling with Databricks, as well as Azure Machine Learning. Hey Jeffrey, how's it going? Hope you're having a great Saturday. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching live. So it was pretty cool. It was interesting because like the Databricks folks, Databricks is building out a much more comprehensive data engineering and data science and AI platform. So it's kind of like, it was, that space is about to get interesting. I think it already is interesting, obviously, given that's my chosen field of work. But I think there's definitely going to be a lot more overlap. And that overlap isn't necessarily a bad thing, because both tools provide unique advantages. And some of the advantages that Databricks has is very good, and some of the advantages of the tools we have is very good. But I think that whole kind of this or that mindset, is very much a legacy of kind of on-prem, right? You have to buy a license, and you pay for the license whether you use it or not. But with cloud services, it's very different. I mean, they could do 2/3 the work in Databricks, 1/3 the work in Azure ML or Synapse or anything. But you only pay for what you use. The licensing is really more about compute, not so. I mean, there's with both Databricks and some other things, there's like a minimum fee, but this minimum fee is like $100 at most a year, or I think maybe like $50 a month or something like that. That whole subscription model where you buy the compute or you buy the service based on how much you use it, is a very different paradigm. And I could tell the customer was really struggling with that, because they thought they had to make this hard decision of, this or that, but it's not. There's enough opportunity. There's enough space in there, and the costing structure isn't such that you have to pick one platform over the other. So it's a yes and, not a this or that. It's this and that, which I think is a very hard concept for some folks to grasp, particularly if you're coming out of the on-premises world. And it just blows my mind. Obviously I work at Microsoft, and I am, we swim in the Kool-Aid, right? We don't just drink the Kool-Aid, we swim in the Kool-Aid. And for us, the whole notion that, by this point you haven't embraced some kind of hybrid model, or just start thinking in terms of, the new subscription model. Hey, George, how's it going? Good morning, sir. How are you? Hope you're doing well. Just sharing with the good folks kind of a customer story I had this week, where they were just blown away by the fact that they don't have to choose Databricks or Azure ML. They could actually use both. And both tools are really meant for very different audiences, right? I mean, Databricks is kind of like a Swiss Army knife, right? It can do everything, and a lot of things it does very well. But I think in terms of just experimentation of data science and tracking your experiments, I still think Azure ML is a better option. But obviously, I am biased. But you can do it, and it's really an interesting kind of case study in how you migrating to the cloud isn't just about running your stuff in somebody else's servers, although obviously that is a big part of it. But a big part of the changes that you get when you go to the cloud are really mental changes. I like to give this example a lot, is when I some time ago, I don't want to say the number of years because it sounds very alarming when I say it. But once upon a time, I worked at Barnes & Noble before it became BarnesandNoble.com, and in the IT department at headquarters in New York. And before we launched the store, although that is the store launch and how long that took is a whole story. But ultimately, before we could even consider selling the first book, we had to drop a lot of money. We had to drop a lot of money on servers, on licenses for those servers, database licenses, web server licenses, and hardware and co-location, right? So, by the time they opened their doors, it was too late. But that's part of why I left. Anyway, but I mean, if you were to start a bookstore or an online store in, say, 1996, let's say, you would have to drop probably about $1 million minimum, probably closer to 10, maybe 15, 20, when you count in kind of staff costs and things like that. But you had to drop a cool 10 million bucks, we'll say, before you can sell your first book, right? That doesn't even count marketing, right? Now, if I were to redo this in 2021, right, whether or not starting an online bookstore today is a good idea, because Amazon's kind of wrapped that up, let's put that thought to the side. But if I wanted to start that service today, I could probably get away with spending probably, I would say, maybe $10,000 most, right? And a lot of that cost is going to be developing the software and developing the code and things like that. But I don't have to buy the infrastructure. I don't have to buy the servers. I basically would spend what I use, right? And if I were to spend that $10 million, probably the lion's share of that's going to be in marketing and word of mouth, and not the technology. And that's really the difference here that cloud gives you. It gives you that ease of startup. Ease is kind of it might be a misnomer. Not that it's easy, but IT infrastructure purchases are effectively none, right? It becomes like it's something you could do on a credit card. I would spend maybe the first month, maybe a couple $100. on Azure or some other platform, you know, I mean, it would be hundreds of dollars to get kind of just the ball rolling. Whereas if I wanted to start a bookstore in the 90s, I mean, I, if I really want to do one on the cheap, because I did have colo servers back then, I mean, it would be a couple $1,000s. So just the getting started point, not even just kind of like ramping it up and getting ready for production. But the other thing that was always a nightmare for a lot of .com entrepreneurs was, oh my God, what if we build it and not only do they come, but they come in droves and the server would crash. You don't really have that problem in the cloud if it's built properly for the cloud, right? Because you have the ability to scale horizontally and vertically. Time for my Dr. Pepper break because I'm using big words. But they don't sponsor the show, though. I would love it if they would. I love Dr. Pepper. Do y'all want to know the real reason I drink Dr. Pepper, aside from the taste wonderful or Diet Dr. Pepper? So for those of you who don't know, the last few years I've been doing keto. And this is not, I'm not a doctor, so, you know, take that from what my dietary decisions are right for me. They may not be right for you. But one of the things I had heard through somebody who runs the ketogenic baking company, she's a friend of mine, and she's based here in the DC area. And she was telling me that some artificial sweeteners are better than others. And the sodas that you have to avoid, right? This is a whole debate in the keto world. But the sodas you absolutely 100% must avoid are the ones that have asuflame potassium or ACE K. And it turns out that Dr. Pepper or Diet Dr. Pepper doesn't have it. Any variety of it doesn't have it. Actually, I can check right now, real life time, to make sure I am speaking the truth. Okay, it does not have it. This does not have it. The Diet Dr. Pepper cream soda. Wasn't sure about that. I don't know what heaven tastes like, but it's got to be pretty close to this. I like that soda. And for a while, they didn't have it here. And suddenly it started appearing. So just treating myself. Good story. Thank you, George. I appreciate that. Yeah, so basically, if you have a lot of diet sodas have it. Diet Coke has it. Diet Pepsi has it. A lot of brands have it. So the funniest thing is, one of my former teammate of mine, and former teammate of mine, he was working. He's like, so when I went to Seattle for this AI Ambassador Airlift, I think I actually did a live podcast from the event, at least the parts that I could share. And it was in Seattle, and I ended up going to like the local Safeway, and they had like a deal for like if you buy 2 boxes of soda, like you get 3 free. So I'm like, I was there for a week, so I'm like, all right. So when I left, I was like, I still had plenty left, and I'm like walking around the hotel, like going around people, do you want some soda? Do you want some soda? And like, 8 people, like, what the hell? Awesome. So you first, yeah, Dr. Pepper has always been available, at least where I live, when I grew up in New York, but it wasn't really that common. But I think it started in Texas. I think it's a Texas brand. I think it's in Plano, Texas, which I think is not that far from Dallas. So yeah, I'm not surprised it would be in can't think. It would be in Louisiana. How about cherry Coke? Last time I looked, ACE K is in, or asuflame potassium, because asuflame is too funny to say. People will just say ACE, and then K is the chemical symbol for potassium. ACE K, last time I looked, was in cherry Coke. But what's interesting is if you go to the different like store brands of soda, a lot of those will not have it, and it's random. Right, everything Wegmans branded they make, Wegmans, is absolutely got that stuff in it. But Harris Teeter, most of their stuff doesn't have it. Actually, half their stuff does have it in there, You just read it on the side. Nothing that Giant Food, which is a Maryland-based grocery store, nothing that their store brand seems to have it. Safeway, I think, is also pretty safe. That's funny. I didn't realize that. And trying to think of another chain here. Food Lion is also seems to not have it either. Okay, so it is from Texas. That explains like where it. If you look on their Instagram feed, like it just they're selling like made in Texas T-shirts. I'm like that makes a lot more sense now. All right, back to my other favorite topic other than diet soda is the challenge. This is from Mohammed. I think the challenge is to define data pipelines for each persona type. There is no one size fits all. That is absolutely right. I mean, that's basically what I told them too. Like, not, I like your description better because it's far more eloquent. But you're absolutely right. And the beauty of the cloud, or the beauty of kind of platform as a service, is probably a better way to say it, or PaaS or SaaS, is that you don't have to think about that. The licensing is included in the cost of the service. So you don't have to. I mean, I remember when I was doing development, and well, I still do development, but when I was doing involved with purchasing kind of enterprise software, I mean, the cost of those things can be just kind of ridiculous. I remember we used something called ChiliSoft when I was at a large German chemical company. ChiliSoft, it never really kind of caught on, although shame that it didn't. But ChiliSoft was a cool thing. I think the guy was from northeastern Pennsylvania, the founder of the company. He ended up getting sold to a company that ultimately got bought by Sun Microsystems. But here's what ChiliSoft did. It put the ASP, classic ASP, we're talking late 90s here, classic ASP runtime would run on Solaris and other Unix operating systems. So at the time, Windows was really maturing, shall we say. And the company I worked for was just very much, no Windows in the server room, that sort of thing. But we ended up kind of skirting that rule because we liked the development tools that Microsoft provided with ASP and InterDev and things like that. But we did not. I could not convince the higher ups that just to put a Windows server in the server room. So we were able to find something called ChiliSoft, which basically ported that runtime over to Linux. So they really could, or Unix. Linux was really just getting started at the time, and it was an awesome product. I mean, but it was expensive. I mean, it was six figures, and six figures like 20 years ago was even more money than it is today. And to get the approval or the sign off from somebody like that today, you needed somebody to spend that kind of money. You needed to get the approval of some big shot in the corner. Awesome. Okay, I'm reading the comment now. Sometimes you don't need data, but that's true. No, you're absolutely right. And sometimes you need both. I mean, that's the thing. And people, I think, still have that mindset of we have to pick one. And you know what? When you have to drop $100,000 minimum for an enterprise license for something, it makes a lot more sense to have to pick one over the other. But I mean, I think the premium Databricks workspace, I don't know what it is. I don't deal with pricing, but I mean, it's somewhere between $50 and $100 a month, something like that. Like, it's not. It's a good meal out. Let me put it that way. Like a good meal out. Less than that. You probably spend more money if you went to Ruth's Chris, or you definitely would spend more money if you went to Ruth's Chris or any kind of steakhouse type place, right? Assuming you get in the quarantine. But I mean, it's not. It's if you're a multi-billion-dollar international multinational corporation, the monthly fee for a premium workspace on either Azure ML or Databricks is not going to break you. It's not going to break your department's budget. So, if you did have to drop, say, $100,000 for one and then $100,000 for other, like you did back in the day, then I mean, then it's a clear decision. You have to pick. But the cloud and the economics of the cloud really make it so, I don't know. I mean, what's the worst you could spend? Let's just say it's $100 each. It's $200 a month, right? That's what, $2,400 a year. I mean, that's, for a lot of these big companies. That's a rounding error, right? That's less than a rounding error. But you're right. So, I mean, you're right. And sometimes you just need Azure ML. Azure ML is a lot better at some things. The AutoML story in Azure ML, the drag and drop designer, those are the AutoML story is better in Azure ML, and the drag and drop designer does not exist in Databricks, right? At least not yet, right? And you know what? If I was doing massive quantities of data engineering that required me to process petabytes of data, I would use Databricks, right? It's just as simple as that, right? It's the right tool for the right job, right? I could, you know, if for some reason I got steak on the mind, I don't know. I broke my fast early today. Maybe that's why. So, you know, if I would take a steak knife, right? And what do I use a steak knife for, right? It's in the name, right? I would cut up a steak with it, right? But if I were to go out and try to chop down a tree with that steak knife, that'd be stupid, right? I'd go get an axe or a chainsaw if I want to cut down a tree. Now, would I take that chainsaw and bring it inside and cut a steak with it? No, that seems like a really bad idea too. So it's really, I mean, it's just, you're right. I mean, it's really the right tool for the right job, and the cloud gives you a lot more operational flexibilities. All right, so I see this here. New question from Mohammed. Thanks for all the questions. I love the questions live because, you know, particularly at work, like we do work, it's like entirely virtual, so it's like it's good to kind of get these questions. I am curious about your take on the data feature engineering versus the data fabric virtualizations versus data mesh. Interesting, data versus data. So data features. And so in my mind, I would think, aren't they, I mean, they are kind of three different things, but three different takes on the same problem. I mean, features engineering is really more about, at least in my mind, because I'm thinking from the context of machine learning and training in AI. So if you want to, let me ask you some questions. You can add some more details in the comments. I would say feature engineering is really about reworking the data. Okay, now I think I see the connection between the three. Reworking the data so that the algorithm has something to kind of lock onto and find features in the raw data. Okay, versus data fabric and virtualization versus data mesh. Data mesh is not a term I'm familiar with. I think there's a couple of things. But I need to think about this. I need to look at what data mesh is to completely answer this. In my mind, data virtualization is about working with data without having to kind of move it or basically have it kind of reside where it is. I can see that there's a connection, but I see those as very different aspects of the same problem. So let me know in the comments, or just shoot me an email. Like I'm not that hard to find. frankla@microsoft.com or frank.lavinia@gmail.com, or just message me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty good at getting back to my LinkedIn messages, mostly. Okay, now that I'm like getting like swamped with a lot of inbound stuff, I'm like, whoa. But if I don't write back to you right away, just feel free to bug me. And remind me that I said feel free to bug me. But it is time for the kids class to end. But I do want to know more about data mesh, because I've heard this used, and I've heard it used in different aspects. I thought data mesh was kind of like data virtualization to the next level, where you kind of have this mesh experience where there's kind of data that exists everywhere. I've also heard that term used in terms of digital twinning. And kind of data produced from digital twins or that type of environment. What is this? Did I get all the comments? Sometimes you need both. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to end the live feed. I hope you have a wonderful Saturday. I'll be online later. And I'll probably, not sure if I'll do a stream tomorrow, but I definitely will do a stream on Monday. So with that, you have a great weekend and you have a great day.